In this video, we're going to learn to move our part up and down using a bunch of switches in our code. This is the longest video so that we can really soak up the knowledge and see it in action. So let's start by duplicating this platform, the one we made at the very end of the last video, and moving it off to the side. So I click on it, hit Control D, and I drag it over to the side. Move your mouse over the platform part in Workspace and click the plus sign. Now create a script. We can actually copy our spinner script to start out by going into our spinner script, hitting Control A to select all, hit Control C, and that will copy our code without deleting it. And now we want to go back into our new part script, double click, hit Control A and delete the print hello world, and hit Control V. And I'm also going to exit out of our spinner part script just so it's out of the way and not confusing. And now we only have the script open that matches with our platform here. So the very first thing we can do is we know we want to change position so that our part is moving rather than just spinning. So let's hit position and see what happens. So there it goes, floating up. The Y value just keeps increasing. But how do we get it to come back down? Well, we learned last time that we could change this true value to a conditional statement or a switch. So what if we did that? What if we use the position, just the Y value from the position, because that's what we're updating, is less than, let's say, 27. So once it reaches 27 studs high, the loop will stop. Okay, so it went up, but it didn't come back down. Doing the conditional statement like that is not going to work. So let's change this back to true. I'm going to highlight this and copy it. Control X, and let's change this back to true, and now our loop will run forever again. There's actually a different way to write the conditional statement, what we had just written there, and that's with an if statement. Instead of just stopping the loop when our switch gets flipped, if statements let us choose what code runs when our switch gets flipped. So we write if, then we write the part that we want to see if it's true. In this case, script.parent.y is less than 27 to check the height like we did with our loop. Then here, we write then, and we'll put the code we want to run in the middle here and in the end. So let's highlight this, hit Control X, and then paste it in the middle. So here we've said as long as our height is less than 27, keep adding to our height. So let's run it again, and we go up to 27, but then it stops. So how do we get it to come back down? There's actually a way built into our code that lets you do something else if what you want to write here is no longer true. And you do this by writing else here. So now our code says if our Y position is less than 27, add to the height. Else, do this, whatever's in here. Right now we have nothing yet. So instead of leaving it nothing, let's subtract from our height by copying this. I hit highlighted, hit Control C, paste down here with Control V, and now we just want to change this plus sign to a minus sign. So now anytime this runs, it's going to subtract 1 from our height, whereas this one would add 1 to our height. So let's hit play and see what happens. So it goes up and then it kind of glitches at the top there. But if we read our code carefully, we can see that this is exactly what we're telling our computer to do. So we're going to need to fix our code. Let's see why this is happening first though. All right, let's be really patient so we can understand this. So we've created this while loop that repeats everything inside it over and over again. So as long as our game is running, this is going to be repeating nonstop. The first thing that happens in our loop is our code checks and says the Y position or the height, I'm just going to call it the height from now on, is our height less than 27? If it is less than 27, then we want to add 1 to the height. And then it'll loop back around because it only runs this else statement if this isn't true. So it's going to loop around, adding 1 to the height every single time until our height here is no longer less than 27. Once the height is no longer less than 27, this becomes false, so this doesn't run. And instead, our computer goes down to this else statement and says, we're going to run this instead. And this line subtracts 1 from the height. So our height gets up to 27, then it no longer raises the height and instead lowers the height. So it lowers the height back to 26 and then repeats the loop again. Now, because our height is 26, which is less than 27, it makes this true again and adds 1 to our height. then it goes back through the loop. And since we've added 1 to our height, 26, it makes our height here on the next loop through 27, which makes this so it's no longer true, and it runs this again, lowering our height back down. So now, every time this loop runs through, our height is either 27, which causes it to lower, or our height's 26, which causes it to raise. And it's just doing that over and over and over again as long as the code runs. So to fix this, we'll learn a cool trick about variables and conditional statements. So outside our while loop, let's make a brand new variable. So I'm gonna write local, and we're gonna name the variable direction, and we're gonna give it a value of up. So right now, we're just saving this word up in a variable that we chose to name direction. And we can check if the direction is up by writing if direction equals up. So this is gonna check if the word stored in our direction variable is up. Make sure to put up inside quotation marks. So now on the first loop through, it's gonna check if our height is less than 27. And then if the height is less than 27, it's gonna run this. And the first thing it does is checks if the direction is up. Now to make this work, we need to make a place where we change our direction variable to down. So on every loop, the code checks if the height is less than 27, and it moves it up if it is, or it runs what's under this else statement, which moves the part down. So that's exactly where we want to change the value of our direction to down. So you write direction equals down. Again, this is just a word we're saving in our variable, and then we can just check it later with our if statement. So now, once the part hits 27, this becomes false, so we run our else statement, which moves our part down and then changes our direction variable to say down instead. Now the part is at a height of 26 because we moved it down 1 from 27, which makes this if statement true. But then it goes to check our direction, which will be down at this point because we set it down here, and what's inside of here won't run. So if our position is inside of here, it won't move it back up. So let's hit play and see. So it stopped. So once it goes up to 27, this isn't true, so it doesn't run any of this. It says, this isn't true, let's run our else statement. And in the else statement, we move it down 1. We move the height from what's gonna be 27 down to 26, and we change our direction to down. Then on the next loop through, our height is 26, which is lower than 27. So this is true, and it runs this instead of this because this first thing is true. But then it checks our second if statement and says, if the direction is up, move it up. That never runs because our direction was changed to down on the last loop through. The problem here is that if we wanted to use an else statement, we would have to write a brand new one in here because each else statement can only be used with one if statement. So this else statement is tied only to this if statement. The cool thing is you can combine 2 conditions in your conditional statement using the word and. So if I type in and then move my direction equals up here, I highlighted that, hit Control X to copy, hit Control V to paste, and let's get rid of this second else if else statement in here. So I'm gonna delete this and the else and end. You should only see one if statement in your code. So the cool thing is you can combine these 2 conditions by writing and here. And so now both of these have to be true for the line in the middle to run. And if one of them is false, it's gonna push us down to our else statement, which lowers the part position. So let's hit play and then we'll go over what's happening in our code. I'm also gonna print out our part's height so we can see it a little more clearly. Print script.parent.position.y, and that'll give us our height. So we see our height's going up, 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 up. It hits 27, and then it starts going down. And it goes down forever right now. So let's see what's going on in the code. So it starts out with our part's position. Our part's Y position to start off with is 17. So it's 17 high. We set our direction to up, and then we go into our while loop. So all of this is gonna repeat over and over again. The first thing it checks is our height under 27, which it's 17, so that'll be true. Is our direction equal up? Yep, we set it up here that our direction equals up. So that's true. So then we just wanna add 1 to our height. And then our loop repeats over and over again. So we're adding 1 to our height, 1 to our height, as long as our height is under 27. But eventually our height hits 27. And so this part is no longer true. Even though our direction is still up, our height has gone over 27, so don't run any of this. Instead, run our else statement, which moves our position down, because we have this subtraction here. We're moving down now, and we're setting our direction variable. We're just saving this word down in our direction variable. And now on the next loop through, we've moved our part down, so our height is now less than 27. It's down to 26. So this is true, but we've saved the word down inside our direction variable. So this is no longer true. So it says, okay, this isn't true. Don't run this. Instead, we're gonna run what's in our else statement. And so it's just gonna keep moving our part down and down and down again. But it keeps moving it down forever below the surface of our floor. So how can we fix that? We can actually add one more thing to our if statement to make it work a little better. So if you change this else to an else if, you can actually give it another condition. So we only want this to run if our height is greater than its original position. If it's lower than the original position, we want it to stop. Otherwise, it's going to keep going down and go through the floor. So we say else if script.parent.position y, which is our height, is greater than 17, because that's our starting position over here, then we want it to do this. So if this isn't true, we only want it to do this if this is true, if our height is greater than 17. And we can actually throw one more else statement on the end, else. As our platform's going down, its height will be less than 27, so this is true, but the direction will be down, so this is false. So it won't run this. It says this is false, I'm just gonna ignore it. I'm gonna move down and check if this is true. If it's going down and our height is still greater than 17, it's gonna run this and keep moving our part down. But as soon as it's not greater than 17 anymore, as soon as our part is less than 17, it's gonna run this else statement. So if this is false and this is false, run this else statement. And this else statement, we can just set our direction back to up, which is gonna make it so the next time it loops through, this is true, our height is less than 27, it'll be 17, and our direction will be up because we updated it here. And then this will run because this is true. And let's see it in action. And there we go. Let's add a weight to it and see it in slow motion. Actually, instead of a weight, let's only move it up by 0.1 at a time. This will slow it down a ton. And every time we're gonna print our position y, like we've been doing, but let's also print our direction. Let's also slow it down so it's easier to read in the print statement. So I'm gonna change this to 0.2 and change these back to 0.1, or just regular 1, not 0.1. Okay, so if we look at the numbers in our print statement, we see our part's height is increasing by 1 every single time, and the direction is up. Then it hits 27, and on the next loop through, it changes our direction to down, and it keeps going down until we hit 16, because 16 is less than 17, and now it prints out that our direction is up, and it keeps going up and down, back and forth, as long as our loop is true, which will be forever because we wrote true in there. Okay, we're gonna delete our weight statement so it moves more smoothly. And I'm gonna decrease these numbers back down to, let's say, 0.5, so that our elevator is moving at a reasonable pace and not just flying up and down over and over again. And there we go. One last thing I wanna show you is that you can also put if statements outside while loops. In this example, I was just showing you inside the while loop so that we could do something cool and have the elevator move directions. But you could write a simple if statement like if 2 plus 2 equals 5, then do and print 2 plus 2 equals 5, then print hi. And we're going to do that and nothing prints out because 2 plus 2 doesn't equal 5, of course. And we could put an else statement and say print, let's just say the word false, and see, it prints false. So this is a pretty obvious example, but I just wanted to show you that if statements do not need to be inside while loops. And you can also add as many else if conditions as you want. So you could say if 2 plus 2 equals 6, then, and then else if 2 plus 2 equals 4, then and so it's going to go down until it finds one of these conditions that's true, or run whatever code is inside and stop there. We've seen how we can switch our code using an if statement to make an elevator. We also changed the value of our direction variable multiple times and used the word and to join our conditional statements. That's it for this video. Click on the next lesson to keep going with the series.